Yo, what's going on, everybody? I am Jake Thomas, welcoming you to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid, a podcast hopefully that you'll figure out is providing you information on how to be happy, healthy, and wealthy and not be sick, scared, and stupid. Today's guest is an interesting person, to say the least. In his own words, he's a heavy-hitting, heavy-lifting boy living the dream in the sport of OCR, otherwise known as obstacle course racing. He's got a lot of accolades, many of which might be seeing him in the magazines like Sports Illustrated, defeating some champions across reality TV shows, featured in things like Broken Skull Ranch. He's also currently the world reigning HYROX. We'll talk about that more. World champion, multiple time champion over in world records and other types of national championships, including multiple obstacle course racing records, a Go Ruck champion, a Murph workout world record holder, a CrossFit Games athlete, a really unique a guy with a really unique personality. He's blonde haired, blue eyed, 6'2", just pure American diesel running machine. And because he showed up shirtless for the interview, I immediately took my shirt off to say, okay, well, we have to do it that way. Without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, the sheriff, Hunter McIntyre.
Oh, dude, that was a long and necessary entrance. I needed that validation to get through this conversation. I got my shirt off because I've been sitting in an altitude tent. I was in the altitude tent for about an hour and a half before I got in with you, and then I'll get back into it, and it's hot in there. So as the sun's starting to pick up out here in sunny Southern California, we're no longer in storm season. Your boy's cooking. Where are you at now, dude? Texas?
Yeah. Texas in the hill country outside San Antonio. It is windy as shit today. It was 85, 88 degrees yesterday, and now we're back in the 40s this morning with some wind, so it's still not quite creeping up to summertime yet, but got a nice afternoon running in the heat yesterday. It was awesome to bleed with sweat. But
dude, I can't tell if you are literally on like the verge of excellence or the verge of death. Like there's a certain kind of like glow and absence in you all at the same time.
Maybe it's a little bit of both,
Maybe it's a little bit of both. And how many days do you have left? 2, 3?
I'm finished. Yeah,
you finished?
Finished yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, dude, I thought you still had a couple more days left. I was like, I'm going to talk to him. He's going to have no energy. A couple of years ago, I did a podcast with Mark Bell, and I was so excited to meet him. Yeah. I've been like just dreaming of meeting this guy. He was like, just someone I looked up to. He was running businesses. He had powerlifting records. But he was in the middle of training for a bodybuilding show, and it was, to this day, the worst podcast I've ever had in my entire life. Like, the dude was half dead. And we're at this big mansion in Malibu on the water, and he's trying to interview me. And he's just like, yeah, man. So what do you do again? Like that kind of, like, I was just like, man, never meet your heroes. But I'm sure he's way more with it now.
Small world. I was talking to him the other day, just a little bit of messaging on Instagram and some voice notes, but corresponding little bits because he caught wind of what I was doing with the watermelon thing. And we were talking about some other people using similar kind of strategies for weight loss and fasting and this and that. And so we were texting back and forth, and now you mentioned him. So shout out to Mark Bell. We'll definitely see you sooner than later, I guess. But man, what are you up to? High altitude tents, like all kind of crazy stuff. HYROX World Championships coming up. I mean, like you just not stop hungry for winning.
Yeah, man, I think everybody's kind of been given some tools and some opportunities on this planet, and you got to really recognize what you have. Like, there's some people who are healers and there's other people that are destroyers. And, I consider myself to be a destroyer, meaning like a warrior type. And that's okay. Like some people don't align with me. Some people sit next to me. They're like, why are you so intense? And I'm like, shut up, hippie. You're a pussy. And like, I don't have anything against them, but it's just like, this is the way it's been forever, and society's changed. Like I don't hold a gun and go to war or battle axe. Like I compete, and I do that. I get my battle in sport. So, I was blessed with, good genetics, good work ethic, good family. And, all these stars aligned to create this kind of interesting position. And like, once I finally caught that gust of wind and I felt it behind me, I was like, this is it. This is my purpose in life. And, I'm not done yet, dude. Like I've already got like 3 other sports stacked up when I retire from this thing, and I'm going to fucking pillage.
I remember when you were talking about hunting people down a couple of years ago, being like, I'm going to find out who the best person is at whatever sport or whatever singular event that they have, and just come show up and fucking train for it and destroy them at their own show. I was like, yes, that is
dude.
cool.
Right now I'm looking at Olympic canoeing and lumberjack world championships. And
Dude,
I just have studied it, and I'm just like, I can't say that I'm better than these guys now, but I was like, you give me a couple of years, you give me a sharp axe. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And, I think from what I've understood, the older I get, some people may hear this the wrong way, but like I just understand myself better than ever before. Like I used to wake up in the morning and make 5 different kinds of decisions trying to figure out what I wanted to do that day. I wake up now with basically like 1 or 2 decisions, and I follow them with absolution. And my life is so in tune and so great that I know exactly what I want from life. I have no indecision. I have no confusion. For the past like year, I would going on dates with these girls, and I would like sit across from them. And I'd be like, yo, so what do you got going on? They're like, I don't know. Might go paddleboarding or go to Bali. And I was like, that's interesting. And then I tell them about my life.
Flying business class, likely.
Yeah. And I was just like, and then I tell them about my life, and they're like, what the fuck? I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing for the next 5 years. Because that's when I'll retire. I'll be done with sports probably in 5 years, which will get me into like about 40. Yeah. So, I'm in a good spot, man. HYROX is the target right now, and just kind of fucking around.
Dude, it sounds like a man, singular focus on his purpose. It's a hard person to stop. A lot of Napoleon Hill and good things in that people can definitely take a page from. But what got you into all that, man? I know you and I have talked about it, personally before. You were spinning and SoulCycling your way to mastery. And then, what was the tangent that brought you, either from the modeling world to SoulCycle, or the combination of the two, and then into, those first OCR events, and thinking like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Like, hey, this is pretty fun. Hey, this is an outlet for me to let out some steam that clearly I've got a high motor for, or like feel like it's a place where I need to excise, my demons, so to speak. What was the catalyst to start all that?
I strongly believe that people like in their 20s, or hopefully you get this done in your 20s, you're meant to be like a pinball bouncing all over the place, trying to figure out where you fit in. Like you're just hitting up against everything, trying to get feedback. I tried modeling. I tried SoulCycle. I tried living in Europe. I tried living in the East Coast. I tried living on the West Coast. I tried to go to college, and I'm just like waiting to find my alignment. And, as I said, there was that gust of wind. I'll never forget when I did my first Spartan race in 2011, I just was like moving, and I could just feel something different. I was like, why does this feel like I'm floating? Why does it seem like this is so different from anything else I've ever done before? And, at the time I was still so young. When I got done with the event, like a week or so later, I got an email telling my results, and I was 6th place out of 10,000 people. And I was like, well, that's pretty interesting. And I still didn't have the clarity. But I went back home and I started being a trainer in New York City again. And I just was like, I just felt that. And I was like, this is so out of alignment. I was just living in Malibu, training for a Spartan race that I crushed. And now I'm back here in New York City, living in a bunk bed, telling people to do push-ups and sit-ups and crunches and put their weights away. And not to say that there's anything wrong with being a personal trainer. Like there's some people that really have that inside of them where they love to be of service. And I just was like, this ain't it. This ain't it, Hunter. Like, get back to that. Like, you need to feel that passion again. And that was my purpose, and I needed to have that passion to back it up. And as soon as I got onto it, I struggled a little bit trying to figure things out. But every single year, as I said, it gets more refined. Like, most people, they see the energy of the sun, and they just, like, sit on the beach and bask in front of it. They're like, I'm going to catch a tan. And I was like, the difference between you and I is I get my fucking magnifying glass out, and I'm like, I'm going to melt something. Like, I'm going to go all in. I'm like, you bitches are basking at the beach. I was like, I'm going to use this as energy to fuel what I need. And, like, that's just the difference between somebody who's, like, a freak of nature all in towards something and somebody who's just kind of, enjoying the pages of life, which is there's nothing wrong with that. But there's definitely different kinds of people, which I've been trying to tell you. And I found out that, I had been such like an ADD, ADHD kid, and I was told that like all my energy was a curse. And then all of a sudden I found out, I was like, you fuckers were wrong. I was like, this is a superpower. And I was like, I'm going to
repurposed.
Yeah, it's time to take out the hammer and nails and beat these people into the cross. I was like, you're gonna feel that shit. And you know, I turned what was considered to be a deficit into a superpower. And you know, once you find that, man, like I hope everybody does, I went all in.
Fucking A. So what was it like, you know, when you start stacking those up, you start finishing, you start realizing like, oh man, this is really what I want to do. Now I still have this other life going on, other career, profession, you know, family obligations, what people think, friendly, you know, romantically or otherwise. Like you bet on yourself, you know, that's a big switch to flip for somebody that's got security and fallback and this and that. But like, you know, what was your way of saying like, fuck it, like, yeah, having all that confidence is great and like finding your purpose, so to speak. But like when you say, I'm going to do this is going to be my career, you know, like, hey, what do you do for a living? Like, I'm a fucking obstacle course, you know, a professional obstacle course racer. Most people hear that and like, yeah, get the fuck out of here, dude. You know, like did you have reluctance about that at all? Or like, were you that confident to be like, I can fucking do this. Like, I'm not just going to do this. I'm going to win. I can compete. I can, you know, make money, etc.
There's a couple factors to it. Like I immediately day one told everybody, I was like, I'm going to be the best in the world at this. Like I didn't even hesitate. I just jumped all in. And I was like, why wouldn't I? Like, I'm going to do that. And I feel that way now about a lot of things. Like I started a supplement company a couple of years ago and I was like, I'm going to build one of the biggest supplement companies in the entire world. And people were like, what? I was like, yeah, you see. And I was like, they're like, what are you up to now? I was like, oh, I just opened up a new chapter in Europe. What's that? Yeah, I'm opening up a chapter now in Asia. And they're like, I remember talking to people a couple of years ago and they're like, hey, you know, I wish you the best of luck. I hope that works out. And I think it's just a similar kind of mindset and action. And for me, when it came to the training and performance of sports, I had quickly figured out, I was like, okay, I believe in this and I want to do it. Now I have to just pursue it every single day. And that was the first step. And then all of a sudden I started hitting the hurdles, which is obviously competition, finances, family and friends. And like, there's just these hurdles of just trying to align this new lifestyle. Cause it was very rare. It was very weird for people. Like not only had I just moved out to the West Coast from the East Coast where everybody in my family was and all my friends were, I knew nobody. I was living in Malibu, California, which is the most expensive place in the world. And I was like, how do I make this work? And rather than like taking little steps, I was just making humongous leaps. And I had a conversation with somebody today. They were like, hey, I'm trying to figure some things out. Like, I just got to figure this out before I can leave this thing. And I was like, you're doing it all wrong. You actually have to create a vacuum. Because if you have a cup that's already full of something else and you're waiting for it to slowly empty out, or you have something else to fill it with, it's not going to have that vacuum factor. Like you want to have an empty cup so that you wake up every single day with a little bit of angst and urgency to get that thing full again. So I had put so much pressure on myself in the situations that I was in that I had to succeed. And I kind of like, it was a little bit of luck and pursuing like with absolution, meaning as soon as I got done with my first race at a high level, which was in 2012, I got a call from the owners of Spartan Race. And they're like, hey, one of our athletes was supposed to go do this event in Mexico. We were put a prize purse on his head. He can't go. We want to send you. We're putting a $10,000 prize purse on your head. One, I had never been to Mexico. Two, I didn't even fucking know that this thing was at altitude and I'd been training at sea level. And I get there and it's this packed event and it's all around beating me in the pro division. And I'm running and I feel like I'm dying. I feel like I'm dying because I'm at 9,000 feet in the sky outside of Mexico City, running in these mountains, getting the shit kicked out of me. And I fought like hell and I got to the finish line in first place, barely, absolutely barely. And I was just like, whoa. And I just made that leap, that gigantic leap that I was telling you about. I wasn't safely grabbing for rungs. I did that kind of like what they call dynoing and rock climbing. And I just leaped for the rock. And I was like, if I fall, I die. But if I make it, I make it. And I started doing things like that. And I'll never forget, I got a job at SoulCycle as a spin instructor, which is the biggest deal in fitness at the time. Like SoulCycle was it.
Yeah.
And
This
I
is
get the job.
12,
I trained.
13. Yeah.
I had started my training, I think, in 13 or 14. But I get it. I trained in New York City. I moved back to New York City. I started the training, think that this is the thing. I kind of pull back on obstacle course racing. I go get the job at SoulCycle. I'm still teaching like 20 classes a week at SoulCycle while trying to pursue running, and it's killing me. It's fucking killing me. And I remember I get the cover of Men's Journal, and which is a big fucking deal. I think like Aquaman was on it.
Can we get a shot of that right here? Cover Men's
Yeah.
Journal? There it is.
It was good. And this was, 24-year-old Hunter. And I put in 2 weeks notice to get this Thursday off, not even 2 weeks notice to quit. And I remember the person who was running, her name was Lauren, I think. I hope you hear this because I know I'm in a better place than you are now. She told me, she's like, I don't think you should do it. She's like, I think that you should focus on SoulCycle. Do you want like your 1 year thing to come up and people find out that you're like going off to go do photo shoots? And I was like, did you just tell me that shooting the cover of Men's Journal was a bad idea and that I should focus on spin? And then I very shortly thereafter that I quit. And then I was on the cover of another magazine. And then I was on the cover of another magazine. Then I had my own television show traveling around the world. And I'm not trying to say this to brag, but I'm telling you people to like maybe listen to this theme of this story where it's like, as soon as you crash into adversity and somebody's trying to tell you there's like the pitch changes and now it becomes a steep thing, don't bitch out and start trying to find a way around. Go right up over the fucking top and tell anybody who won't come with you to get fucked.
Oh, yeah.
And I swear to you, dude, like I let go of everybody for what I call let going of the beach. Like you may be on this beach right now in life where it's perfect and you've got a pina colada in your hand and it's 75 outside and the water's perfectly warm. And you're going to have to let go of that beach because you've heard rumors that on the other side of the ocean, there's an even better beach, even better pina coladas, even better temperature, even clearer water, even prettier girls, even better cabanas. But nobody else is doing it. But you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to start paddling. You're going to start going. You're going to get nervous. You're going to be in the middle of the ocean. Should I turn back? The waters are going to get rough. But then all of a sudden you get there and you're like, holy shit, it was all true. And it was moments like this in my life that have happened several times. I can list a bunch of them.
Yeah.
That I came to this position where it was like, hey, do I stay where it's safe or do I jump? And I remember I picked up this talent of 3-2-1 jump when I was in the University of Montana, and there was this cliff called Heaven and Hell. Hell was 90 feet tall, and I climbed up to the top of it, and there was a cross there because someone had died. And there's all these people at the bottom chanting, cheering, some people being like, you won't do it, pussy. And I just didn't even hesitate. I just said, fuck this, 3-2-1 jump. And I started to pick up this mentality in my life where every single time I reached a point where it was a question of whether or not to do it, is this going to work? Am I okay? I just started counting. And I'm fine.
It seems to be working out pretty well for you. It's funny you say 3-2-1 jump. Whenever, much more casually, not nearly as serious or intense, but friends of mine and I growing up, we would always be like, you guys ready to go? Yeah, let's go. 3-2-1? Like, friendly, playfully, 3-2-1, 3-2-1. So to hear that, but for you using it in such a, like you said, absolute way is fucking rad, man.
Yeah.
I remember, you giving me some really good advice a few years ago. I was going through a shitty breakup at a time, and Hunter was like, dude, just go be a world champion at something. That was the simplest, most dry way he could say it. It was just like, dude, just go be a world champion at something. I was like, oh, sure, let me just go do that, But you said it so matter of fact. And then you didn't say anything else. You didn't give me the instructions on how to do it. You didn't lay out all the chapters of the book and how it's going to go about. But you knew who I was. You knew what I was into, what I was doing at the time. And you're like, dude, just go be a world champion. And I was like, okay, those are the orders. Got it. Received. Execute.
That's when you got into natural bodybuilding?
Yeah. But like something so simple as that, like for you to have been in those places. And again, SoulCycle, like should have been thanking you for the brand awareness that you extended for them on the covers of the magazines as opposed to demonizing them. It's faulty on their part. But yeah, man, simple advice from someone that's, seen that. And one of the things and reasons I respect you so much, and from then and even, I was obviously up until now, is you're not a theorist. You're the truest practitioner of practitioners as far as in people that embrace the meritocracy. Like when we were at the casting for your video series that we did in New York, I was nervous. I was worried because, you how it is better than me, but like castings, it's never about performance per se. It's always about preference, or it's far more about preference, right? Like, hey, you fit the bill. He's perfectly described the features we're looking for, but we're going to pick that guy or that girl. Well, that's not what you said you were looking. Yeah, I changed my mind. Fuck. Right. But when it was that day at your thing, it was like, okay, do these movements until you can't. I was like, fucking perfect. Merit. We're doing something on merit. And everything you kind of talked about so far, and from what I gathered from knowing you from the races, it sounds like you're just all about that merit in the best way, and that you simplified it in the sense that all I have to do is get there before them.
Yeah.
No one says anything. Meaning it doesn't matter what modality expertise you possess, how much knowledge, how many certifications, how much experience. It is as simple as get from this line to that line faster than the other person, and that's all you focus on.
It simplifies things. One thing I like to say often is the best way to beat losers is by being a winner. That's the best way to do it. It's just the best way to do it. And you all of a sudden encounter all these people with this loser-like mindset, and you're like, I'm not going to complain about this. I'm also not going to get into this banter with you of whether or not this is right or wrong. I'm just going to beat you. And it may not even be in the context of a straight line, fastest person to get it done possible. It's just actions in life.
Yeah.
And like I have encountered that a ton of times, and it's always been my true north. And it's one of these kind of things where, sure, it comes with sacrifices. Sure, it comes with mistakes. And it doesn't always pan out exactly the way you want to, but 99.999% of the time, you are further than what you'd be if you did it a different way. And, I'll never forget when I met you guys at that casting. They were trying to do that same exact game where they were telling me, they're like, hey, we like this person, we like that person. And I was like, I honestly was watching everybody, and I feel like we have a lot of work to do. And I only saw a couple workers out there, and I saw you working. And I was like, I get this girl's like blonde and looks like an hourglass figure, but I saw her doing the least amount of work to just be seen. And I saw like a couple other like handsome, muscular guys. I'm like, least amount of work just to be seen. Yeah. And I just saw you doing work. And I was like, well, I can at least rely on that. And that's why I gave you the job. I called you Nonstop Jake. You're still on my phone as Nonstop Jake.
Yeah, we can always put makeup on me, like we can't put the other things on now.
It's been good though. I mean, I think it's been difficult the past couple of years because I have become more successful, and the more successful you become, the more you have to alienate yourself from a lot of people.
Yeah.
And like, I know this sounds like a disgusting comment, but the fastest way to not be poor is spend time around poor people. They will make poor decisions all the time. And that doesn't mean like I look down on anybody who's in a worse situation than myself, but you should look at this and listen to this and say to yourself, if you want to be a champion, you have to surround yourself with champions. And not everybody is a champion, including your family, including your friends. And you have to have these tough conversations where it's like, I can't have dinner with you right now.
Yeah.
I can't share this moment with you right now because I can only align myself with so many thoughts every single day, and your thoughts aren't aligned with those. So, I don't want everyone to listen to this thing and think that it's all daisies and sunshine, but if you do care enough to be one of the great ones, there is something special and very rare. The rarest color in the entire world is gold, because only one person gets it every single year. And you can't paint over copper and put it in a different light and pretend that it's something that it's not. It has to be genuine. And once you have it, it's very, very rich, and it doesn't fade.
There is no nobility in poverty. 100% agree. Mm-hmm. And poor is a state of mind broke is a state of being. I'm broke today. Okay, well, I won't be broke tomorrow. But poor,
Yeah.
you're poor if you choose to be. That's a choice. That's a state of mind. But seeing you grow and evolve over the last few years and having to negotiate a lot of the things you're talking about regarding competition, success, call it fame, exposure, awareness, growth of the business, and getting into everything else that's been coming from you. Like it seems like you're handling it pretty well. I mean, you're still alive. You haven't killed 5 people or impregnated 20 women. I don't think so.
I
So
think about it often. You ever heard of Hunter S. Thompson?
Great writer. Great
Yeah.
writer.
He has
Love
this
the way he
line.
talks. Love the way he writes.
Yeah, he has this line, you won't find reasonable men on top of tall mountains. I only live on top of mountains. That's something you'll find out if you keep track of me. And it's a very interesting and unique lifestyle. And that's the way I've been able to navigate it. There's also this quote from Marcus Aurelius that I'm going to butcher. And I've struggled with it from time to time because Marcus Aurelius discusses how men that retreat to the mountains are actually weaker than you think, because you need to be able to retreat into the mountains in your mind. And that's something that I've been learning how to do more commonly and more often, because I can't always hide in the mountains.
Yeah.
But it has been something that I have created, and it's created a lot of opportunity for my life right now, and I've used. But that's another skill that I'm really trying to work on. I will tell anybody who's listening to this story right now that the risk that does come with putting yourself in a position of these extremes is you do have extreme mindsets, and it's very tough to be in a regular room with regular people at times, because your unreasonable ways of being on top of a mountain, whether it be physically or mentally, makes you an unreasonable person. And that's what Hunter S. Thompson said. So that is something that I will tell you guys. It's be cognizant of that.
I think that's a common trait, though, with anyone at the pinnacle of success and competition. I think there are far more traits of commonality than there are separation.
Yep.
He showed up early, he stayed late. She did this. Like they prepared more, they worked harder, they isolated themselves. They, one of my favorite books in the world, Leaders Eat Alone. And talking about, some of the 3 things that throughout human history have been used to find enhanced levels of consciousness and spiritual enlightenment, or whatever: extended treks, prolonged fasting, and isolation. And isolation is critical to all of them. It's shared between all of them, because how else could you focus so singularly and absolutely, to use your word, on something if you were going back and giving into those, weaker or lesser beings or situations? How else could you expect to have the greatness of success, or, like you said, to taste, the flavor of gold, which only comes around once a year? I don't think you can. I don't think you should. I think that should be the prerequisite for it. Not a cost, but like, yeah, it's the investment. I think people choose to see that as the cost. Is like, well, I see it as the investment. And how lucky that's all it costs, per se.
Yeah. I just don't want to ever end up knowing that when I lay on my deathbed that I sit back and say, I should have, or I could have, or I would have. That's another thing that I would say is probably the only fear that I really have in life. No wasted days.
What, as you went through the evolutions of OCR, talking about the origins of Spartan Race, and, running the Tough Mudders a lot, and Broken Skull, killing it in that TV show. And then HYROX comes about. I remember when we were talking about this when it was first starting, and you were just getting into it, and now you're obviously the man, globally known and renowned for being the face of the sport and everything like that. Was it something that you saw from the beginning, like with everything else? You're like, okay, this is gonna be my baby, and I'm gonna fucking destroy this thing too, just like everything else I'm doing?
Well, they originally offered me the opportunity to compete in 2018, and I was on my way to go to the CrossFit Games, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I've already got another goal, and once I'm fixed on something, I'm not letting go. It's like a pit bull.
Yeah.
And then I came out of the CrossFit Games, and I was like, that was cool, but I'm definitely not going to do that another year. And, their first inaugural one in the United States was coming up like 2 months after I had gotten out of the CrossFit Games. It was in November, so September, October. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go try this thing. And it was much like that first Spartan race where I was just moving out there and I was like, why does this feel different? It was like another aha moment. And I think like, every 7 to 10 years we have those things. Yeah. It's like, oh, what? This feels different. And I was in this position where I just said to myself, I was like, I think I'm ready to get back into endurance after doing all of that CrossFit training. But I was like, I still love testing this physicality of strength and endurance, like, muscle and lungs combined. And I was like, this is the best formula I've ever seen in my entire life. I'd already been running for 10 years, almost 8 years. And I went all in. 2019, I won. I beat the old world record holder. I set the world record. Then all of a sudden 2020 came around. COVID hit. I had all these big plans and everything got all fucked up. And that's when I focused on setting the Murph world record. And HYROX for me in the very beginning for the first couple of years was really tough. It was harder than OCR was because less people knew about HYROX because it was a European brand.
Yeah.
Less people wanted to invest money in it. It was in the middle of COVID when brands had basically dumped their budgets. I had lost everything, and I was trying to basically shoestring my lifestyle of this like insanely intense training and international travel and being number one, not like a competitor, like undeniably number one. And I was really having a hard time with it. So much so that I won again I won 2020. I gave up in 2021 and I lost. It was the only time I had ever lost. I lost 2 back-to-back races and I fucking flipped out. I was so angry with myself. And then I've won every single race ever since and set world records every single time because I was like, if I'm going to show up, I'm going to burn the world to the ground. I was like, I'm not going to do this unless I'm going to do it absolutely. And I made that promise to myself. But it was still so bad. I was still so broke doing it that I quit in 2022. And I decided to just go try to paddle in the Olympics. It was not a good road like this. It was like this. My other careers were like up, like, oh, Hunter's doing well. Now he's got his own TV show, magazine cover. I'm winning HYROX's left, right, and center. And people are like, sounds kind of dumb, dude. And I'm like, no, it's cool. You should come travel. And they're like, nah, not really interested. And they're like, how much money did you make to win world championships? I was like, $2,500. They're like, oh, really, broke boy? And I was like, no, it's cool. I promise. And it's so crazy, dude. Like this last year alone has dwarfed my opportunities of business and growth by the last 3 years combined.
Wow.
And it's just like, it was crazy. It was almost like being a painter that like nobody gave a shit about when he was alive and is like most talented, most prolific. And then all of a sudden he's like on his deathbed or he's dead even. And now all of a sudden the respect comes. It was a very troubling time for me because I was doing what I consider to be probably the fittest endeavor in the world. Yeah. I still think the Tour de France is like the hardest metric of fitness, but for 1 hour to see who's the most rounded, like fittest person, just all around freak, I think HYROX is it. That's why I'm doing it. And I was like, how can nobody care? Like, how could nobody give a shit about this thing? Like, it's crazy to me. It's not like some random sport like, underwater basket weaving. I'm like, this is really some freak shit. And it's very livable and relatable to the common man or woman who likes to work out. Yeah. And now they're literally in 2 weeks having 21,000 people compete in London over 3 days.
Wow.
And like, they couldn't even get 500 people in a room when I was first started. And I was just like, oh my God. It was like, it sounds like a woe is me kind of story, but it was just one of these kind of things where I'm telling you, like, it was like ramen noodles kind of living, like, it's just like everything was tight. I was trying to make it work, and it was a fucking struggle in the beginning, but I'm glad I stuck it out because it's kind of been a game changer since.
Man, for somebody that loves programming and writing workouts, you must have geeked at that when you first saw it. Like, you must have loved it for the programming that it is, yeah?
Completely. I mean, unlike a lot of coaches out there where I think they just like make people sweat, which is it's a version of living. Like, I look at things as a mathematical problem. Like if you come around my house, like I'm measuring my body fat at all times. I'm on the scale. I'm looking at wattage. I'm looking at time versus speed over distance and weight generated. Like I love it. And I've come up with formulas where I'm just like, I'm going to crack the code. And then I like to write the programming for other people. I'm like, whether this is your issue, this is your issue, this is your strength, this is your weakness. I was like, here's the formula. And HYROX is just one of those kind of things where it's super interesting. It's like the CrossFit version of triathlon. You have the same test every single time globally. Anywhere you go, you can know who's the fittest person at any time or whether or not you personally are progressing. So by my standard, that was very cool. And that's why it's been so well received by the community, because human beings love that. Like they just want to know their metrics at all times. You know, hey, you like to run? Cool. You ever run a marathon? Cool. What was your time? Like it's just that 1, 2, 3. And now HYROX is the same exact thing. It's like, oh, you do HYROX? Cool. What course do you run? Cool. What was your time? And the human mind just loves numbers. They just can't help themselves. And like, I think it's going to be one of these kind of things where you're going to watch HYROX literally like triple to 10x in the next couple of years in volume. And it's going to become astounding. Probably the best chance fitness has ever had going to the Olympics also.
Oh, bold statement. Bold statement. Cool. How do you like, obviously you like it a lot. You love it. Compared to the games when you competed in CrossFit, obviously, you know, very different things, but take us through a little bit of, you know, compare and contrast on that, especially for people that are interested in one, maybe unsure of the other, or, you know, like to do both.
I hate to say this, but the CrossFit Games was like a Taylor Swift concert, and HYROX is still like a local pub show. Like it's massive, obviously. And as I said, there's tens of thousands of people competing, but the CrossFit Games to this day is the most insane orchestration of competition I've ever participated in. Like the volume of equipment, the amount of space that they're using, the amount of staff that they have going on, the logistics involved, it's insane. I mean, that is like MIT, Harvard, Cambridge, Stanford level education of operations combined. Whoever's managing that, you know, Dave Castro and his team, the best. There's nothing like it that I've ever seen. And that's crazy. And, you know, as far as competing at the CrossFit Games, like I love the opportunity, but it was one of these kind of things where I don't think that I felt alive the way that I've tried to explain the way I felt during Spartan Race and HYROX. Like it didn't like sing for me. It's like the same reason why some people love pickleball, but other people don't love tennis. Like it's somewhat the same, but it's just not. And I don't know why. I'm like, why don't you guys play tennis? Or like pickleball's so much better. It's faster. It's this, it's that. And it's just odd. Like for me, I've always loved, like I train outside 10 to 15 hours a week on bicycles and running. And I'm in the gym for like 3 to 4 hours a week. Yeah. And like, you know, CrossFit athletes are in the gym for 15 hours a week and they go outside for maybe an hour.
Yeah.
And I want to see the world, dude. Like I get to live the world in Malibu, California, or in Big Bear, or in Park City, Utah, Durango. You're all across Europe this summer. And I was like, that's a life that I think is worth living. And I get to do it through this vessel of sport.
That's pretty good. That sounds like a pretty good deal. What's some of the toughest stuff for you? You know, you're talking about as a competitor, and to give some insight to someone who's maybe never run a race before, OCR, you know, any one of the ones we've named, maybe it's HYROX, maybe they're preparing for HYROX. What are your key points for someone trying to crack into that, you know?
I mean, I think a lot of people,
being the top guy in the world in the sport, you know, what can they take from the number one?
I think numbers are like the most important thing possible. I think you have to stop going into the gym if you want to get involved in stuff like this and just like, hey, I'm showing up today. Like you either have to create a plan or somebody creates a plan for you. And it has to be something that's measurable, repeatable, and livable. Meaning like I recognize that I could not live the CrossFit lifestyle. So it's not livable. So there's an X right there. Could I repeat it? Could I measure it? Yes. But now all of a sudden you go into HYROX and I'm like, this is a very livable lifestyle. Like I can take my bike in the back of my truck anywhere, pair of shoes anywhere, and work out with like 70 to 80% of the necessary like needs and go all around the world and see it. So that's that livable thing. And I don't want you guys to get into a training program where you think you have to train like 20 hours a week. Like I think people like overtrain for marathons all the time. That's not livable. You feel like shit. Measurable and repeatable, meaning like if you're going to do bench press, you're doing sets of 5 for the next 8 to 10 weeks. That's measurable, and the repeatable is the 8 to 10 weeks. It's the only way you're going to see progress. You guys need to also go out and like set a loop around your house that's 30 to 60 minutes, and you need to go run that thing, and you need to repeat it and measure it and say, hey, there's a free app called Strava, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Go in there and say, hey, last week I did it in 30. This week I did it in 29. This week I did it in 28. Rest and recover a little bit. Push a little bit harder. Push a little bit harder. Do 1 minute intervals, 2 minute intervals, 3 minute intervals, like, and repeat it again. And it's just a game. Like my training's actually not that complicated. It's super simple. But the thing that people don't get is I repeat it so many times. If I do like a couple skills 50 times a year, meaning once a week, and I'm getting better by 0.01% or 0.1% over 50 weeks, I go up 2.5%, something like that, whatever it is. But in my sport, it's 3,204 seconds it took me to do my last race. 1% is an increase of 32 seconds.
Oof. Oof. How close have some of those finishes been, just for people, for context?
Nobody's really in with a minute of me.
What about the ones you lost?
I lost those by both under a minute.
Okay. So there it is.
But that stuff's like, it does matter. Those 1% would have been me caring or not. And you know what? Like, I'm as talented as it gets, and I'm also as hardworking as it gets. But then all of a sudden, everybody knows hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Like, it's the damn fucking truth. Like, that's not a cheesy slogan you put on the back of a bumper. It's the reality of life.
Yep.
Like, if you turn your back on me for just a week, I'll be closer to your shadow than I was before. You do it for a month, you won't even know where I am because I'll be so far ahead of you. And that's the kind of guts you got to have to do things in life if you want to be at the top of the pack.
Freaking love it. So what's when's the next one coming up for you? You're obviously training for one right now. Yeah.
I'll do Anaheim, which is the last chance qualifier, and I'll just like put a blazing hot time down there just to feel it on course. World Championships June 7th, and then I take the whole summer off of just like traveling around, drinking beer as out of steins. I'm going to be in a mankini on the beach in the south of France. Like that, you should be able to enjoy life. If you're willing to be in the caves and in the mines digging for gold, you should be able to spend it once you earn it.
Oof. Sounds like a real life pirate. I love it.
Yeah, bud.
Well, man, appreciate the time today, dude. I mean, you're busy, and to take any minute away from the focus is much appreciated. And give us let's do a quick little rapid fire. What is Hunter afraid of?
I'm just afraid of missing out. Sometimes I just don't want to rapid fire. I don't want to give up any of these beautiful days that we're given.
Favorite food?
It's hard to say no to a good ass steak.
My man. Also the same guy who has made careers living off of Pop-Tarts and fucking shit carb food and proven it in races also though. So he's got an array.
If the engine's hot, dude, Ferrari will burn it.
Hunter's company, Builder, BLDR, Nutrition and Sports, definitely check out. And one of the, again, some great notes that Hunter's given me. One of the most important, and kind of came into play with the 30-day watermelon fast. And why I did that was Hunter was the guy who really told me, regardless of macronutrient sustenance and just actual calories, hydration is far more important and critical to athletic performance and just overall homeostasis. And this was some years ago, and I was thinking at the time, like, yeah, I know. And he was like, trust me, dog, like, let them eat, let them take their stuff. He's like, just be hydrated and you'll do better. And that's
every time
a running theme. And like, that's the backbone of Builder. Yeah. Of like the hydrate.
Yeah, man. I mean, I created the thing because I just recognized I I raced a race in 2013 in World Championships, and I was leading the thing so close to the finish line that I started cramping. And I was like, how could I be the fastest car on the planet and still be failing? And I had to go through this turmoil and figuring out what I had done wrong. And it inspired me to build a nutrition company and teach the world, educate the world, share good products. So if you guys are ever looking for it, go to buildersports.com or Builder International for all international sales. And you can find us on the internet on almost any project. We got good YouTube channels, everything. It's a blast.
Yep. And for other stuff about Hunter, go to huntermcintyre.com. Check out House Training or Hunter's Academy of Strength for his programming and all customization for training and otherwise. One of my favorite programs Hunter used to run was the Look Good Naked program. If you're looking into that, that's the one I've always subscribed to. Duh.
Shred, baby.
But other than that, man, thank you so much for being here. And finding Hunter online is pretty easy. Just Google his name. You can find him on Instagram at Hunt the Sheriff. And obviously making headlines in all the races. He's still fucking not losing. But
thanks, brother. Well, I appreciate you having me, dude. Everybody, it was a pleasure meeting you. Hope you guys learned something today. I'll catch you soon, brother.
You too, dog. Love you, man. Thanks, bro.